My name is Alistair Lee, and in this video, I'm going to walk through an overview of Adobe Connect. I'm here on the Adobe Connect Central homepage, and I'm going to open up an existing room. So one important thing to know about Adobe Connect is that the rooms are persistent. That means you can create it once and design it, and you can reuse it over and over again. It exists at whatever URL you create when you create the room. So I'm going to click to open this room, which will open in my browser. Adobe Connect has applications for Windows and Mac, as well as mobile devices like iOS and Android, but it works well in any modern browser. Here I've got an entry screen where I can select which devices I'd like to use, as well as my camera, and I can preview what those will look like when they're turned on. I can also decide whether they should be on or off as I join the room. I'm going to turn off my webcam so that it's not on as I join, and I'll click Enter Room. The room opens up here in my browser, and you can see a layout that includes a number of different small windows, and we call these pods, and all of the functionality in Adobe Connect is delivered through pods. So for example, I have a chat pod here for chat, a poll pod for polls, an attendees pod for showing me who else is in the room. All of these pods are available up here in the pods menu. We'll look at each of these pods in the overview today, but you can see here we've got share pods for sharing your screen or sharing documents, note pods for taking notes, the attendees pod to show who else is in the room and what role they're playing, a video pod for sharing your webcam, chat pods for chatting, as well as a Q&A pod for moderated chat, files and web links pods for sharing resources, poll pods, a quiz pod, and an engagement dashboard. If I'd like to add a new pod to my stage here, I simply select it from the pods menu. For example, I'll choose poll and I'll add a new poll. And as a host in the room, I can move these pods around. I can resize them the same way that I would resize any window in Microsoft Windows or Mac OS. And everything that I do as a host is synchronized with everybody else in the room. So all of my participants, all of the attendees in the room will see exactly what I've designed onto this layout. And I call this a layout. A layout is essentially a group of pods. And over here on the right-hand side, I have a layouts panel. This enables me to go from one set of pods to another simply by clicking a button. So I can move from my lobby layout to my introduction layout by clicking on that layout in the layouts panel. I think of this like an interactive storyboard, a storyboard that a filmmaker would use to depict the different scenes in a film. You can think of layouts in a similar manner. These are the different scenes or sections of my webinar or my virtual classroom or my meeting, and I can go from one set of pods to another set of pods simply by clicking on the appropriate layout. And you'll notice we've organized these layouts to match the flow of, for this, a sales enablement session, a training session. So we're starting here on a lobby where I'm able to start engaging with my audience immediately. Instead of just showing them a screen saying, please wait for the host to begin the session, we can bring them into the room. We can engage with them using games like this rock, paper, scissors game over here. We could have music playing. And we want to take advantage of the fact that people are in the room early, so we can provide them with a chat pod so that they can start speaking with each other, as well as poll pods so that we can set the expectations of interaction right from the start. In this particular room, I've got an introduction layout next. This is an opportunity for me to introduce the speakers, to turn on the camera, and Adobe Connect shows me a preview of what my camera will look like before I share it with everybody else in the room. This gives me a chance to select the appropriate camera on my system. I can also add a video background if I'd like to choose a blurred background or one of these Adobe stock images as my virtual background. I'm not going to use a virtual background here, but I am going to turn on my camera by clicking the share button. You'll notice here I've also got the option to enable the webcam for participants. If I look at the microphone menu, and I'll just hit share here, I've got that same option for the microphone. Participants in Adobe Connect don't have microphone and webcam rights by default. As you can see, it's really easy to give everybody microphone rights or webcam rights, but by default, only hosts and presenters will have those capabilities in your Adobe Connect room. I'm also going to hide the title bar here to make my video image even bigger and fill up the pod. Next, I've got a slides layout. This is very common for many sales enablement sessions where you might want to move to some slides. I'm going to turn off my camera here and show you that in addition to being able to upload your slides to your room, you've also got access to a sidebar. This is something that only the hosts and the presenters in the room can see. So my participants won't see the sidebar that I've just opened up here. This sidebar gives me access to all of my speaker notes. Anything that I added in PowerPoint will automatically come into this SharePod as I upload my PowerPoint deck to Adobe Connect. I've also got access to my outline. If I want to do non-linear navigation, if I want to jump directly to speak about the web portal, I don't have to look unprepared by skipping over a bunch of slides. I can use this outline to jump directly to the slide I'm looking for. If I'm not sure which slide that is, I can even search for it. I'll type in retirement here and find any slides that mention retirement so I can jump directly to that slide. Some real advantages in uploading your content to a web conferencing platform instead of trying to screen share absolutely everything. Those advantages also include being able to provide more interaction. My next layout is a group exercise. And here, in addition to the standard chat pod that we're using throughout the sales enablement session, I've added some additional chat pods to my stage. This gives me the opportunity to provide focused conversation and raise the level of engagement during the session. People are more likely to contribute when there's a specific topic that they can contribute to rather than just adding their comments to the generic chat pod. So we can give them that opportunity by going to the pods menu and adding additional chat pods to our stage. Here I've got one chat pod to discuss pricing and another to discuss objections around missing features. My next layout is a video, and we can upload MP4 content to a SharePod in addition to PowerPoint content. In fact, the SharePod that I'm using to host this video supports PowerPoint slides, Adobe PDF documents, videos like this MP4 file, audio in MP3 format, images, including JPEGs, PNGs, and GIFs, as well as custom pods that are essentially HTML applications that you can upload to a SharePod to extend the functionality in Adobe Connect. You'll also notice the way that this flow has been structured is to provide interaction as well as knowledge transfer. So we start with some slides and then go to an exercise for interaction. We go to video and then have a discussion about that video where everybody can turn on their webcam and chat with each other for that video discussion. Then we go to some slides again, and I'm able to duplicate any existing layouts just to include them in my flow. I've got slides 1 up here and slides 2 down here, even though they are essentially the same layout. I can do that really easily as a host, by the way. I can click on New Layout here and duplicate any existing layout and make whatever changes that I need to make, which may be no changes at all if you just want that same layout to appear multiple times in your Layouts panel. We go from slides, again, this knowledge transfer, back to some interaction. And on this layout, I've got a number of different polls. Adobe Connect supports 3 different poll types, and you can see them here. Multiple choice with radio buttons, where you can select a single response. Multiple answer with checkboxes, where you can select multiple different responses, as well as short answer questions. For any one of these poll pods, I can determine whether the participants in the room are able to see the results or not, simply by clicking on this broadcast results checkbox here at the top. I can also click on view votes as a host to see specifically how people have answered each of those different poll questions. That's not something that participants will be able to see. After the polls layout, I'm going into a demonstration. And here again, we're using the Share pod in Adobe Connect for screen sharing. Again, that Share pod includes support for lots of different document types, including PowerPoint, PDF, audio, video, images, but it also supports whiteboards and screen sharing. Even though I'm hosting this room in a web browser, I'm still able to share my screen to everybody else in the Adobe Connect room. My next layout is a layout that has been designed for breakout rooms. And we support breakout rooms in Adobe Connect. You can add up to 20 different breakout rooms, and you can use those breakouts for exercises. One of the wonderful things about breakout rooms in Adobe Connect is that they have the same properties as the main room. In other words, they're persistent. That means you can create your breakout rooms ahead of time and customize each one. So if you've created 10 different breakout rooms, you can add a different exercise in each breakout. You can add a different set of pods. You can have people automatically assigned to those breakout rooms, or you can have people self-select to determine which breakout they want to go into. To manage breakout rooms, you'll use the Attendees pod. This Attendees pod actually has 3 different views. The list view, which you'll see by default, this will show you everybody in the room, as well as their role. You'll see, by the way, a little green dot next to my name. That's because I've got Show Individual Engagement on. This is a signal to the host, and only the host can see that dot, whether somebody is engaged or not. That dot will go from green to yellow to red as people become less engaged. But back to the Attendees pod, in addition to the list view here, it supports a status view. This works well if you're asking people to set their status, maybe to agree or disagree. And in addition to being able to see a little icon next to everybody's name who set their status, this view enables me to group those people based on how they set their status, to make it really obvious and easy to count how many people have selected agree versus disagree. People can also use this menu to raise their hand or provide feedback to the host. Maybe they need to have the host speak louder or softer, speed up or slow down. The third view here in the Attendees pod is the breakout room view, and this shows me all of the different breakouts that are available. Breakout rooms will take on the same look and feel as the active layout you were on when you clicked the Start Breakout for the first time. But again, these breakouts are persistent, and so whatever they look like when they're first designed will persist. You can go and customize each breakout room and not worry about them being replaced every time you click that Start Breakout button. If I want to add more breakouts, I can click this plus button. If I want to rename or remove a breakout, I've got icons to do that here. And Adobe Connect will let me assign people to breakouts by dragging and dropping them, by hovering over their name and choosing Change Breakout Room, or by clicking this Distribute button here at the top, which will be enabled if I've got participants in my room, and automatically distribute all of my participants evenly across all of the different breakout rooms. My next layout is a quiz layout, and this quiz is closed right now because as a host, I haven't published it. But I'm able to add a quiz to my room really easily to enable game-based learning or to test the understanding of my learners or participants in a room. I can hit Reopen Quiz here to open it up for everybody in the room, but I'm going to choose to go to the settings and edit the quiz so I can show you the different types of questions that are available. Let's add another question so that we can step back to see some of these other questions. I'll delete the one that I've just added now that I'm in edit mode. And you can see some different question types here, including multiple choice questions. I've got a true or false question, a multiple answer question, similar to the multiple answer poll where you're able to select more than one response, and even a fill in the blank question. We can identify which of these terms, in this case it's fixed, should be a blank, simply by using the highlighter here and selecting that term, and then adding some additional options that somebody could choose. So once I've got my questions added to my quiz, I'm able to see them all at the same time. I can adjust the order of these questions simply by dragging and dropping. But I've also got a number of different settings that are available. I can do things like set a time limit for the quiz, randomize the question order or the order of the options that show up for each of the quiz questions. And then I can decide whether I want to reveal the correct answers after my learners have submitted their quiz responses, and also determine how they should see those responses. Once I'm ready to go, I can hit publish, and this will open up the quiz for all of my participants. I'll be able to see in real time their progress through the quiz questions, whether they've started it or not, whether they've finished it, how many questions they've answered, and how many they've gotten right. And all of this is available to me after the fact in my room reports as well. I can see my quiz reports as well as reports for polls and attendance and everything else in Adobe Connect. After the quiz layout, I've now moved to my wrap-up layout. This is the final layout that I'm using in my session, and we're incorporating some additional pods into this particular layout as well. Adobe Connect supports a synchronized notes pod, where I can use this to share notes with everybody else in the room, similar to a whiteboard, but ideal for text-based content. In addition to text, you'll notice some rich text editing features. I can add bold, I can change the colors, I can add links or styles to things like lists really easily using this notes pod. I've also added a quick survey at the end. I want to make sure if this is a sales enablement session that people have what they need before they leave. And I've also made available some resources. That's done in two different pods. One is a files pod where I've made some downloadable resources available. My participants can click to download each of these resources. I can upload almost anything to this downloadable resources pod. I've also made some web links available. I can use these to provide the links to my participants. You can see here they can copy those links, or they can click on the link to go directly to that website. As a host, though, I'm also able to push people to a particular website if I'd like, and this will open up that website in a new browser tab. Everything that I've shown you so far, I've shown you on this thing that I call a stage. Each of these layouts I talk about it being a stage. But Adobe Connect also has the concept of a backstage area. That's available only for hosts and presenters. You can find it under your meeting menu by clicking on Host and Presenter Area. This opens up a section here on the right-hand side that only hosts and presenters can see. So my participants are still only seeing the quiz. They can't see any of the pods over here on the black background. I can change how big or small this is simply by dragging that in or out, and that doesn't affect anybody else. And you'll also notice this host and presenter area, this backstage, also doesn't move around as I move from layout to layout. It persists in whatever size I want. It doesn't change. All of the same pods are there. And this provides an excellent back channel for working with my producers, with other hosts or presenters. Essentially, anybody in that host or presenter role will see the backstage area, and anybody in the participant role will not. You can actually further customize it. If you only want to limit it to hosts, you can choose that here in the host and presenter area options. This gives me an opportunity to chat privately with the other hosts and presenters. I've got one notes pod back here. I use the notes backstage for lots of different things. Sometimes I've got a speaker biography back here. If I need to introduce a speaker, I might have my demo flow in a notes pod. I might have seed questions, or ask my producer to pull out commonly asked questions so that I can answer them verbally by having them backstage. If I want additional note pods, again, that's really easy to do. I can resize some of these pods. And any pod that I add to my room while the host and presenter area is open will automatically be added backstage. This is really helpful. It means if your speaker comes with an updated version of the presentation, or if you think about a new poll that you might want to ask, but your session has already started, you can add that new pod backstage, set up the poll invisibly. Nobody can see you do this. I'll open the poll here, and I'll drag it onto my stage, making it look much more prepared than I was. From a participant perspective, this poll just appeared fully formed and ready to go. I can close the host and presenter area if I don't need it, simply by selecting that from the options menu. That's a quick look at the fundamentals of Adobe Connect, including the persistent rooms, the pods, and the layouts. Thanks for your time.